Hi, everyone, and welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Shannon Swank. Shannon has more than 25 years' experience in marketing, business development, public relations, and sales. She began her career in tolling in 1998 with Caseta Technologies. She later co-founded PlusPass and currently serves as its chief marketing officer. PlusPass focuses on providing pay-in-motion payment solutions. Shannon also serves as chair of the Tolling and Customer Management Work Group of the IBTTA Emerging Technologies Committee. She's involved in several other councils and task forces of IBTTA that we'll talk about later. Shannon, welcome to Cafe IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Pat. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you as well. Well, this is Cafe IBTTA, where we drink coffee and talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And I have my coffee today in a beautiful Yeti cup provided by Shannon Swank of PlusPass with my name on it. So, Shannon, thanks so much for the mug.
You're so welcome.
And this is awards season at IBTTA. Yesterday or 2 days ago, we closed the application process for the Toll Excellence Awards, but we still have two other awards programs that we really want you to apply for. The new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award, established by the Task Force on Diversity, Social, and Racial Inclusion, recognizes IBTTA member organizations that make a significant contribution to advance racial justice, equity, inclusion, and meaningful opportunities in society. The submission deadline is June 14. The Leadership Academy Alumni Association Alum of the Year is also a new award program this year. This award recognizes a leader who has demonstrated and made significant commitments to tolling and the transportation industry after graduating from the IBTTA Leadership Academy. The submission deadline for that program is June 18th. So be sure to apply for those exciting awards programs. Well, we are taking your questions for Shannon, and we want to get started right away. So many of you know that Shannon grew up in El Paso, Texas. So using the chat function and selecting the option all panelists and attendees, please type a word or phrase that describes your thoughts or feelings about Texas, the Lone Star State. Tell us what you think about Texas. Wow, where are all the Texans? Okay, big. Awesome, my home. Flashy, independent. Yeah. Big hair, barbecue. Shannon, was that an admission?
The higher the hair, the closer to God.
Okay. Don't mess with Texas. Cowboy boots. All right. Best music. All right. Keep those comments coming in about Texas. We'll probably return to this later in the program. We love your thoughts and feelings about Texas. So, Shannon, we mentioned that you grew up in El Paso, where your father retired from the military. Tell us about your family of origin and your experiences growing up.
Yeah, loved growing up in El Paso. It's a border town, so a little bit of fun to have in Mexico. But mostly, I think one of the greatest things about El Paso is people usually think that there are a lot of Mexican people in El Paso, and there are, but because of the military base, there's such diverse backgrounds in El Paso. So I loved growing up there. My husband actually grew up there, although we didn't meet in El Paso, which is crazy. We didn't even know each other in El Paso, but his father retired from the military there as well. So great city. Can't say enough about it.
Now, your husband is also involved in the tolling industry,
He
yes?
is. Yes, we are both lifers.
Lifers, all right.
Yeah.
So tell us what happened after El Paso. What was the next stage of your life and career?
Yeah, so I ran track in high school and I actually got a scholarship to run track at UT Arlington in Dallas. So that's where I wound up. I only ran for a year. I realized it wasn't for me. I wasn't going to the Olympics. And when you're on scholarship, it's tough. They own you, they are paying you.
Ah,
So, but stayed in Dallas, loved Dallas, and that's actually where I met my husband, and we lived there through the birth of our two children, and then moved to New York for about 4 or 5 years because of work. We were working on the MTA Bridges and Tunnels contract. I was in tolling at that time, and that was an amazing experience. Yeah.
so you are a co-founder and chief marketing officer for PlusPass. Before we get to that, tell us about how you got involved in the tolling industry and how you got to your current position.
Yeah, I was mainly in sort of the entertainment restaurant business. I was the general manager of a restaurant in Dallas. And after we started having children, that was just not going to be a career that was conducive to having a family, and we wanted a large family. And so my husband was actually working with a woman that knew Glenn Dedeker, and he was looking for someone um, to hire for sales and all kinds of stuff. And so I started at Cassetta, and then that was it. That was all she wrote. How I start.
So tell us about the move from the evolution from Cassetta to PlusPass.
Yeah, so after all electronic tolling really started taking hold, or electronic tolling in general, um, Glenn and I, sort of realized that people were going to need additional ways to pay. One size fits all was not necessarily going to work. And so we really wanted to focus on providing payments that fell outside of the traditional toll tag. And that's how PlusPass was born. So that's what we've been working on since 2012. We sold Cassetta in 2007. We started PlusPass in 2012 and launched our first product, our phone app, in 2013.
In electronic tolling, one of the biggest challenges, of course, is getting to that infrequent user. Agencies will get up to 80 or 85% penetration, but then you've got this whole raft of other customers
Mhm.
that just don't go there. Tell us about how you serve, how PlusPass and related technologies appeal to, sort of the non-ETC.
Yeah, I think that, at the end of the day, the agencies cannot work without the vendors, and the vendors cannot work without the agencies. I mean, we really are tied together. And so I think there's a lot of us, not just PlusPass, out there that are really trying to help capture those types of users. And, for us, I think our messaging has always been, if you're going to travel the road more than a handful of times a month, you need to get a tag. I mean, that's where you're going to save your money. Everybody agrees it's the lowest cost, not only for the agencies, but for the users. But there are those few people that just, they're not going to do it. And they come from several different backgrounds. I mean, there are, people out there that we call them the tinfoil hat people very lovingly. They don't want to deal with government. They're really nervous about that. And so, we serve all those types of users that for whatever reason are not going to get a tag.
Tinfoil hat, it's a technical term and it's lovingly used. I can tell that you're lovingly using that term.
Yeah.
Shannon, tell us about the name PlusPass. How did you get to that name, and what is it intended to signify?
So PlusPass was originally born out of shame. Our company was, or our product was P-Toll. And to us, it made sense. Phone toll, we were using a phone app. But there was a lot of jokes to be made for P-Toll. And then we went through a rebranding a few years ago and, realized that we wanted to go beyond tolling. So mobility as a service, parking, transit, um, all of those types of transactions. So PlusPass made sense. Luckily, it was available. I don't think anything is available on the internet anymore. And so it made a lot of sense for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Café IBTTA. Our guest today is Shannon Swank. She is the co-founder and chief marketing officer of PlusPass, and we are taking your questions. You can post them in the chat using all panelists and attendees, and we would love to hear your questions for Shannon. Shannon, you are perhaps one of the most engaged members in IBTTA. I won't list all the committees and task forces that you serve on, but you said to me in another conversation that IBTTA continually sets the framework of how all of us operate in tolling, and I want to be part of that framework. Tell us more about that and your motivation for being so active and engaged in IBTTA.
Yeah, I think, I've been a part of other organizations where they were largely networking organizations. And I really feel like IBTTA is trying to affect change and empowering its members to affect change. So when you look at, policy development and the support that we get from IBTTA and the leadership, I feel like all of the committees that we have are very meaningful committees. Some of them are, a sign of the times. A lot of them are forward-thinking committees. And, you know, I feel like when you say the word volunteer, there needs to be another name for that, because volunteer means, in essence, sort of free. You're giving your time away. And so I think when people hear free, they don't associate value to that sometimes. And there is so much value to the committees that IBTTA supports. So I feel like in the committees that I'm in, I'm actually building tools and affecting change and supporting, others within IBTTA.
Shannon, you are chair of one of the working groups of the Emerging Technology Committee, and the folks involved in that committee, and there's hundreds of them, seem to be especially energized and active and driven. Tell us a little bit more about that committee and your role and what's motivating people.
Yeah, so I'm the chair of the Tolling and Customer Management Work Group under Emerging Technologies. This is my third year, and it's the third year from the other work group, most of the other work group chairs. And I think that speaks to the fact that, we're really developing some meaningful tools, information, um, trying to educate the industry. There's a lot of buzzwords out there, but really boiling it down for the industry. We've done a tremendous amount of work under customer management, and all of the volunteers have just been so energized in terms of, what can I do, and how do we get this done? And this is so important. So again, it's one of those things when you talk about the framework of IBTTA, it's really allowed us to start thinking about some of these, the future, not only what we're dealing with right now, but how is that going to translate in the future for all of these other innovations. So again, really meaningful work and really satisfying to me.
Shannon, speaking of the future, we've got our first question from Vicki Dewey. How do you see transportation payments evolving? And what all can a person pay for with PlusPass today and hopefully in the future?
So PlusPass today is tolling only, although we will be launching parking soon. I think for the future of payments, one of the things that we really need to focus on is number one, engaging vendors or others outside of the tolling industry. If this is all going to work together, I think that I've said this before, it's a little bit challenging when you're trying to get a transit agency to work with the tolling agency, to work with, whoever's in charge of parking. They have their own individual budgets and politics. And I think that the vendors can help bring all of those together for payments. But we need to get engaged. And also, when you look at the Toyotas of the world and the Fords of the world that are starting to enter this market, it's not enough to say this is really cool technology. The infrastructure, again, is going to be what it's going to be, and it will evolve over time, but payments will be immediate. And so, how are we going to engage ride share, OEMs, all of them to facilitate payments for users?
I was just thinking how I heard in the news today that Amazon is planning to acquire MGM and something like 8,000 films of MGM to contribute to its store of entertainment. And it makes me think about big changes coming up in the tolling industry and in the payment space. Any thoughts about that? Big companies sort of on the outside starting to make inroads here.
I think that's one of the reasons why we really need to start engaging these other companies that aren't traditionally part of the tolling fabric. And I hesitate to say this and may ruffle some feathers, but we're sort of a small boutique industry in the grand scheme of things. And when you look at auto manufacturers, ride share, they pulled together with some serious lobbying power when you look at some of the rideshare companies and the auto industry as well. And I think that rather than have some directive, sent down to us from the higher political ups, we really need to start engaging these companies to figure out how we work together. I think that there's a lot of them that really don't understand tolling, and we don't understand how they're going to fit into our ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my thoughts when we were really working in a challenging way on nationwide interoperability. And you
Exactly.
think about, you talk about tolling being a boutique industry, and you think about an industry that, is $22 billion a year in toll revenues in the US. Well, that's a pretty good number. But if you think about telecommunications, which is probably hundreds of billions of dollars, there might have been much more incentive in the size of that industry to get to interoperability. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for your notion that it's a boutique industry, and that it has advantages, but it has challenges as well.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's one versus the other. I think that we just got to all come to the table and, especially in tolling, start proactively engaging some of these other organizations and industries.
Yep. Shannon, you're involved in a bunch of other committees and councils in IBTTA. Tell us about some of those activities and what motivated you to get involved.
So the Diversity Council, I think, is, one of the best committees right now. It's a true reflection of what's happening around the world. It affects all of us, and it was pretty important to me. The first time that I really experienced racism was when I moved to Dallas. And no offense to Dallas whatsoever, but living in El Paso, again, because of the military base, I mean, I had friends from all different backgrounds. So when I moved to Dallas, I really saw, this is the Black neighborhood, this is the Mexican neighborhood, this is the white neighborhood, and had some other experiences with racism that were truly interesting. And I had to kind of look at things very differently. So I think it's super relevant right now. And I think the work that they're doing, again, is very meaningful.
Speaking of the task force on diversity, one of the members, Midria Clark, has a question for you. She says, Shannon, I love how your career has evolved What's next for you?
Total world domination. No, I'm kidding. When are you retiring, Pat? I'm taking your position. No, I'm kidding. Um, right now I really do, as cheesy as it sounds, I love what I'm doing. I love what we're doing as an organization, really focusing on that underserved community. I think that, in the industry, we constantly call them cash based. But with all of the technology that's out right now, they're not necessarily cash based. They're underserved, they're budget constrained, I think is probably the best description. And I think that that is what 20-30% of the United States. They make up 20 to 30% of the individuals in the United States. And so that's a huge number that we really need to focus on, and we need to start working with them versus trying to wedge them into what we're doing. So for me, I love that. I think it's super meaningful. After that, I don't know. I can't have any more babies, so I don't know what I'll do.
I think world domination is good. I like that. I like that. You could dominate in a really nice, benevolent way.
My husband would say that I have total world domination in our house. So
Here's another question, Shannon, from Benton Tempest. Who do you think is the best outside organization or company or association that we need to engage with? And I'm assuming, presumably, we're not engaged with them now. Who do you think?
I think rideshare is huge. I mean, when you look at what Uber did, I mean, they commissioned and paid for their own congestion pricing study in Seattle, and that speaks volumes. I think that, we need to engage rideshare because I think that that will facilitate a focus on the user being responsible for the payment versus the vehicle owner. There are so many different layers when you look at rideshare that is an excellent place for us to start to develop those tools.
Shannon, drilling down a little bit more into your involvement in committees and councils, one of the groups you're involved in is the Women in Tolling Council, which I think it started as kind of a loose, informal group a couple of years ago and was formalized as the Women in Tolling Council last year. And in an earlier conversation, you expressed that there's a real need for this. And I'd like you to talk a little bit more about that need.
Yeah, I mean, huge thanks to Patty Ribstello and Mary Solik, for really identifying that as women we needed to come together. I joined the toll industry in 1999, so many years. There were hardly any women in tolling, and certainly most of the women were sales positions, marketing, and now we're really seeing a focus on STEM programs for girls and for women, focusing on engineering. So I think it's one of those committees that really allows women to engage with each other and also help some women sort of find their voice. There are a lot of, it can be intimidating to be in a room with only men. I'm the only committee chair under emerging technologies that or work group chair. I'm the only woman, so in a sea of men. So I think that can be intimidating. I think Women in Tolling is really helping to educate and support women in that way.
Shannon, you've had a number of role models who have supported and lifted you up in the industry. Tell us about some of those role models.
So I have 5 women that my husband teases me because I sort of geek out over them when I hear about them or talk to them. So there is Deb Sharpless, um, Diane Cicchetti, Meryl Mandis, Mary Jane O'Mara, and Patty Rubstello. I think that those women they're so accomplished, and I've never been in a room with them or on a Zoom call where they weren't completely intentional. You don't even see them flinch that, oh, maybe I should have worded that differently. I mean, they are just there to get it done. And I want to be them when I grow up.
Those are excellent role models. We talked about these are the people that would be on your Mount Rushmore of role models in the tolling industry.
Absolutely.
Well, Shannon, I'm sure there are people who look up to you as a role model, and I know that you're a mentor. You participate in IBTTA's mentoring program. Give us some advice that you would provide to people who are entering the industry, either as young people or people who are switching careers from another industry. What advice would you give to these up and comers?
Yeah, I would say number one, educate yourself as much as possible. Number two, trust yourself. I mean, when somebody hires you, they hire you for a reason. You have skills that they want. And then third, absolutely find your voice. We're all just people. I mean, I adore the five women that I look up to, but at the end of the day, we're all just people. We have our own problems. We have significant others and children and challenges. So, use your voice and trust your skills. You're there for a reason.
Shannon, a two-part question. I want you to look back and tell us what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the industry over the course of your career, and then look forward and tell us what are the big changes you see on the horizon.
Well, obviously, electronic tolling has just completely changed, the face of how we charge. And with COVID, I mean, it just put AET on steroids. And so for a number of reasons, obviously, there's safety, throughput, and so there's that obviously, but I think also the desire by a lot of agencies to engage third parties to help them, capture those additional users that fall out of the traditional tag model is huge. I think the openness to potentially work with other third parties like the Fords of the world, the Toyotas of the world, rideshare. Um, I think those are probably the biggest changes, and I think that they're only continuing to evolve. I mean, we were sort of a stagnant industry for a while, and now with all of the new technology, I think the willingness to embrace the new technologies, whether it's from a customer service aspect all the way up to driving your vehicle on the road, it's exciting to see us as an industry start to embrace those.
I think a lot of people are looking at road use charging or vehicle miles traveled, mileage-based user fees, any of those terms that you want to look at it. And both the House and the Senate and their US House and Senate with their reauthorization legislation will be intent on putting together a national pilot there. Tell us how you see that unfolding and what's the role for PlusPass and for the tolling industry.
Yeah, it's funny. I see, or did for a long time, see road user charging as just another form of tolling. I mean, here in Texas, we would not have the infrastructure necessary for the growth that we're going through, especially in Austin, without toll roads. So there's the infrastructure aspect to it, but there's also the sort of pay as you go aspect to it. If you don't want to take the toll road, you don't have to take the toll road. But with road user charging, I think it really levels the playing field in terms of the gas tax and what cities are getting what types of funding. But at the end of the day, and you'll constantly hear me beat this horse, it comes down to payments and how are users going to pay for this. The infrastructure is going to be what the infrastructure is going to be. I don't walk into the Gap and worry about their infrastructure. What hangars are they using? How's their layout? I want that product to be a quality product. So my pair of jeans, I want it to be quality, I want it to last, and I want to be able to pay for it in a convenient way. And I think that those are two things that we really need to focus on. And again, I think PlusPass fits in there because we are facilitating payments for whatever it is. We're not tied to one bit of infrastructure.
Shannon, I'm going to make a couple of announcements and then I'm going to come back to you for some final words of wisdom.
Sure.
So, coming up June 10th, the book club, looking at the book So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma Oluo, is happening on June 10th. Be sure to sign up on the web. It's going to be an outstanding conversation. I've started the book myself and it's very, very readable. Other events coming up in June, watch the IBTTA website, ibtta.org. The annual meeting, fingers crossed, we're 85% certain that we're going to go to Anaheim October 10 through 12 for our 89th annual meeting and exhibition. And in November 4 through 6, our maintenance, engineering, and roadway operations workshop in Louisville, Kentucky. And don't forget to complete the survey at the end of this program so we can hear how we can continue to improve. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for being with us. Tell us, what are your final words of wisdom before we sign off?
So there is an adage that says, do what you're afraid to do. And I feel like if you live by those words, you will never have regrets. You will really be surprised by people and yourself. And it is, and life will always, always be interesting. So I am constantly doing what I am afraid to do.
You're a courageous woman, Shannon. Thank you so much for being on Café IBTTA today. And thanks to the IBTTA members. Be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road.